Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is dedicated by our Torah Center founders, Pauline and Soli Asa, dedicated in honor of their parents, Chacham Joseph and Norma Asa, and Tuni Misri and Any Misri, Ezra Victoria, Alava Shalom. We have the zechut of seeing Chacham Yosef in the Beit Knesset a lot of times for Mincha. He's a holdover from a previous generation, old school, the way we're so proud of our grandparents. Breakfast in the Class also dedicated for speedy and complete Fuashima for Eliyahu Shlomo Mazal for Tuneh and for Chana Bat Simafega. And the week of Kobra was sponsored by David E. Ash. We also like to wish Mazal Tov and Mabruk on the wedding of Bianca and Zach. Hazaku Baruch and congratulations on your special day. My friends, let us begin. Our parasha begins by telling us this idea in Parashat Bo, Uleman tisaper be'oznei bincha, in order that you should say over, that you should tell the story in the ears of your son, Mincha, Uben Mincha, and the son of your son. And what is the story? What story will you tell? You will tell the story of Et Asher Hit'alalti b'Mitzrayim. Now, what does that word mean? What the story that you will tell will be the story of how I hit'alalti. What does that mean? Ramban says, I made a mockery of Egypt. Tell your children how I made a mockery, how I played a game. I played with them, the Egyptians. That's how Ramban translates it. But the question is twofold. The first question is, why are you telling? If every man is telling bincha, then by definition, every ben bincha is covered. So if I have an obligation to teach my son something in the Torah, then what will happen when you, my son, when you have a son? You'll teach your son. So all the Torah needed to say was, Uleman tesaper be'oznei bincha, in order that you should tell your children. We don't find this idea, right? And you will teach et bincha, you'll teach your son and your son's son. Right? In the Torah. What do we say in Shema? In order you should teach your children. Shinantam lebanecha. It doesn't say v'shinantam lebanecha ubnei banecha. What are we communicating over here that was so important? And why are we saying this idea that you should teach your son and your son's son about how I made a mockery of Egypt? Why is that such an important thing? So my friends, I want to talk a little bit about, number one, this idea, and also secondly, why did God feel that it was important to play with Egypt, to make a mockery out of Egypt? You want to save the Jews? Save the Jews. You want to take them out? No problem. Why do you need to play with them? Why do you need to make them into a mockery? Why do you need to turn this into a story? And the answer, my friends, is really very powerful. So I want to share the answer to this through a beautiful story that I come back to all the time. There was a rabbi whose name was Rabbi Shlomo Hyman. This rabbi, he was a tremendous rabbi, and he unfortunately didn't merit to have children himself, so he was tremendously invested in teaching his students in the yeshiva. One day, he comes to the yeshiva. He's already older, he's already not feeling well. And there's two boys sitting there in the classroom. And the rabbi is teaching with all of his energy, with all of his passion, screaming, on top of his voice, pounding his fist on the table. And they know the rabbi's not feeling well. And the rabbi's old. And one of the students says, Rebbe, there's only two of us here. Relax, take it easy. We can hear you, even if you're not... And the rabbi said, I'm not talking loudly. I'm not screaming so that you'll listen. I'm screaming so that your children can hear me. So that your students can hear me. My friends, he understood that transmitting Mesorah, transmitting the message of our forefathers to our grandchildren is something that cannot be done in a whisper. But it needs to be done with a roar. That you speak loudly enough that your actions speak loudly enough that your children are not the ones that hear, but that your children's children's also hear exactly what you're doing, what you believe in, and what you stand for. HaKadosh Baruch Hu understood that the story of the Jewish people in Egypt was something that needed to be passed down, not just to the next generation, but from generation to generation. Now, it is instructive that in the Torah, there are many things where the Torah says you have to remember them. In fact, after the Tefillah in the Siddur, you'll see something called Asara Zichronot. There are 10 things that a person has an obligation to remember. You have an obligation to remember those things all the time, every day. In fact, some people read off this list after the Tefillah is over. But some people, very good, some people, I don't know if you ever noticed, in some Siddurim, they have in the Kiryat Shema, they have broken down from different parts or phrases or words in the Kiryat Shema, it links it to one of the memories that you have to have. So it says, like, it talks about Egypt in the Shema. It says, that's to remember Egypt. It talks about Lo Tatur, that's to remember. Each bit is designed to help you remember one of those other of the 10 Zichronot. My friends, I want to point out one thing. We have to remember all these things, correct? But only one of these things. You have to remember Amalek, right? Therefore, it's a chiyuv mideoraita to come to shul once a year, read the Torah. Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek. Do we have a night in the calendar year set aside where we gather around the table and we tell the story of Amalek? No. Do we have a night where we get together and we have a seder with the grandkids, everyone around, multimedia presentation, food, drink, smells, tastes, memories to remember Miriam and her speaking Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu? We don't. Only one thing do we have an entire evening set aside to burn into the consciousness of our children and our children's children. Only one thing. What is that one memory? Yetziat Mitzrayim. And not only do we tell you, do you have to read and do a seder that takes you until the middle of the night, but rather, like we say in the Haggadah itself, Kol HaMarbeh L'Saper. Anyone who says, who teaches, who speaks more and more and more about the story of Egypt, and you know what the best way to do it is? Like it says in the Haggadah, until the morning light. Because once the sages were sitting in Bnei Brak, and they went until the morning. My friends, what is it about this memory? Why is it so important? What is God communicating? I want to share something that I think is very powerful. The Maharal asks a very interesting question. He says, if you know, all throughout our Talmud and all the writings of our Chachamim, they talk about the 4 different times of of Galuyot. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Nathan. And thank you even more for noticing. My friends, the 4 Galuyot, the 4 exiles. Does anyone know what the 4 exiles are? Paras Madai, that's 1. Bavel, Edom. We said Bavel, Yavan, Greece. So one more time. Edom, Paras Madai, Bavel, and Yavan. Those are the 4. The Midrash actually brings that already from the beginning of time, when God was creating the world, okay, it says in the Pasuk that there was Choshech al Penei Tehom. Each one of those, in that Pasuk, each one of those things is representative of one of the Galuyot. What are we in now? We are now in the Galut of Edom, and that is referenced by Tehom. Choshech al Penei Tehom. Choshech, the Midrash says, is Galut Yavan. Shehechshichu et enehem shel Yisrael. They darkened the eyes of Israel with their gezerot. And what is Tehom? Tehom is Edom. Because it's so deep You can't see the bottom. Edom, all the other ones were relatively short-lived, those galuyot. Bavel was the galut of the first Beit HaMikdash, leading into Paras Madai. So all three of those were spread across 70 years. They then go back into Eretz Israel. What happened to the exile, the second exile of the second temple? We go into the Roman exile. Edom was still in the middle of it. That's referenced by Tehom. In the incomplete world, we understand the idea of galut. So when we're describing a world that is dysfunctional, that is in its disparate parts, what do we talk about? We talk about galut. The world is all over the place. Tohu vavohu. Choshech al pnei tehom. My friends, and then God creates the world. That means that galut is not only when the Jewish people are not in Eretz Israel. Galut is when the world is not completed, is not put together. It's not a finished product. It's all the pieces that come in the box. And what do you have right now? I have the possibility of a refrigerator. I have the possibility of a desk, or like they call it in IKEA, Morgenstern, right? I have these wonderful opportunities, but I don't have anything. My friends, that's what galut is. Asks the Maharal, why then, in the listing of the 4 galuyot, do we not have the first galut? Galut Mitzrayim. So Murray is telling me that in Mitzrayim are all 4. He describes it a little bit differently. Maybe the same idea, but from a different perspective. He says that the mother of all galuyot, unlike the mother of all wars, Saddam, the mother of all galuyot was Mitzrayim. It wasn't one of the galuyot, it was giving birth to the concept of galut. That's what Egypt was. So therefore, it's not one of the 4, it is the mother of the 4. Now, this sounds to me to be, so far, like an academic discussion. But I want to share that actually, this idea is so pertinent and so important that it would change our lives if we understood it properly. What makes Mitzrayim the mother of all galut? And the answer, my friends, is really hidden in why Hashem had to make a mockery of Egypt. Let me give you an example. You know, if your child tells you that they want to take a job and they want to pursue professionally popcorn making, you might tell your child, listen, I don't know how good of an idea that is. You have some parents today that believe that whatever your child does or wants to do, you have to support them. You know what I tell such parents? If you support that kid, you're going to support him forever. A parent's job is not to make a child feel that they're always right. It's not your job. A parent's job is not to tell a kid that everything that they do is going to turn out okay. That if they feel it, it must be true and real and smart. You have to do it in a way where you don't break the child. You have to do it in a way where the child doesn't fall apart from the way you constructively give him criticism. But depriving your child of that is taking away from him the most important thing that he has in this world. Having a truth sayer in his life that is 100% on his side. If your kid wants to professionally make popcorn, that's going to be a disaster. You might want to save your child from some of the dreams that they have, because those dreams are actually nightmares. My friends, sometimes you tell your kid, I don't know if that's a good idea. But the kid, he doesn't get it. It's not enough. That's where the koach of hitalalti comes in. Of making a mockery of something. Making something not only seem like it's not a good idea, but it's silly. Do you know the difference between those two things? Not this is not a great idea, but this idea, it's silly. It's not serious. There's nothing here. There's no merit to this. Now, it is extremely important to be able to choose the times when you employ hit'alalti. But there are times where without hit'alalti, you don't achieve your aim. Let me be very, very clear. I don't know if there's a more important choice in your child's life than who they marry. You meet your kids, I'm not talking about when they're already at a very advanced stage. But you meet the person your child is dating. And look, and you're a parent. And you know your kid inside out. And it's not your first trip around the block. And you know that this is not a good idea. Not because you're Syrian and they're not Syrian. Not because you're Moroccan and they're not Moroccan. Because you're Ashkenaz and they're not Ashkenaz. Not because they're not tall enough. Not because they're too young or too old. Not some silly reasons. But something real. And you know that this is a terrible idea. You pull your child aside, listen, you say, listen, I love you, but I've met this person now a couple times, and I have serious concerns, I'm not sure. And the kid says to you, listen, thank you, Dad, thank you, Mom, but stay out of my business. Right? I know everything. I'm 20. Yeah? What's a parent's job at that point? To support their child might be worse than letting him become a professional popcorn maker. Right? Parents' job then is to be able to draw out the thing that they're trying to communicate about this shidduch, about this person, and to express it in a way which leaves no doubt. My friends, you know what the most sinister thing about the Galut of Mitzrayim was? Number one, it happened very slowly. Number one, true. Separated husband and wife. Good, that's part of it. Started off good. That's also part, similar to what Nathan is saying. I want to share with you what is so dangerous about Galut Mitzrayim. In the beginning we made money, also part of it. So many different things that made Mitzrayim difficult, challenging. But I think that there's one thing that made it more challenging than everything else. And that's that Paro understood the greatest secret. And that secret is, if you can destroy a person's confidence in themselves, if you can take away a person's ability to believe in themselves, then there's nothing left in the person. And you can control him completely. That's what Paro understands. Paro understands that instead of getting the guy to work for me today and build me the Colosseum and build me the Arc de Triomphe and build me all the beautiful pyramids, instead of getting them to build me in the short term things of value, if I take away from them any feeling that they have a possibility at self-determination, that they have a possibility at running their own lives, that they are capable human beings, if I could break their confidence, their ability to believe in themselves, then I will control them forever. So if I give up in the short term by having them build buildings that will collapse because I have them build on quicksand, then you know what happens? Then I own these Jews forever. What the Maharal is teaching us, therefore, is that the mother of all Galuyot, where does it live? It lives in Mitzrayim. And each one of those Galuyot can be very different. It can celebrate or scintillate and shine. It can give off these seductive whisperings and tell you, come to me in Yavan. I am progress. That was what Yavan sold. I am intellectual academia. I have, the secret to your happiness. And that's what Yavan says. Bavel, similarly, presents a different idea. But behind each one of these ideas is a dose of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim powers Galut. The idea that in a person's mind is the key to owning that person. And whoever controls the key, controls the man. On the key in Yavan was written one thing. On the key in Bavel was written another thing. But my friends, in every life situation that you struggle with, where you don't feel at home or comfortable or powerful or able to make a difference in your life, that is a person who's living in Galut. And for a person to come home, what do they need to feel? Like they can control this situation. The greatest tool in the arsenal of the Yetzer Hara is his ability to cause you, Yi'ush, to give up hope. Where are the Jews? The Jews in Egypt are in a place, forget if it's called Egypt. They're in a state of mind where they have no hope. Where Moshe comes and says, I'm going to take you out. You're going to be free. You're going to have families. You're going to go to Israel. Moshe is promising them the world. Velo shamu el Moshe. And they don't listen to Moshe. You know why? Mikotze ruach u'me'avodah kasha. Paro's worked them to such a state where they can't even hear the possibility that they are deserving of, that it is possible for them to have freedom. You hear that? My friends, that is why Mitzrayim is the mother of all Galut. So when Yavan says, progress, 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 you know what happens? You hear people say this? Listen, this is just the way things are. You can't get in the way of progress. You can't fight City Hall. You can't fight academia. That's what Yavan tried to do. They wrote it Al Keren Hashor. They wrote it on the horn of the shore. Our rabbis ask us, why did they make them write in the Galut of Yavan, in the story of Chanukah? They had them write on the horn of the ox, I have no portion in the God of Israel. Why did they make them write? Why on the horn of an ox? You can't find a better place to write your slogans than on the horn of an ox? And the rabbis explained that when a person is plowing his field, where is he standing all day long? He's walking behind his ox. What's he facing all day long? The Greeks came up with the original billboard on your way to work. And they had a message that sat in front of your eyes all the livelong day. I have no portion in the God of Israel. That's what they made the Jews write on the spot that was directly opposite them the whole work day. You know what that does eventually? It makes a person feel you can't fight City Hall. In every state of Galut, someone or something is telling you, you can't. You won't. Impossible. It's never been done. That is the nature of Galut. Coming home requires, when the Jews go to Israel that first time, it requires them to say, to feel, to understand that there are giants there, and not but there are giants there, but even though there are giants there, still we will come home. You know, if God wanted the Jews to come to Israel, and He knows the spies are coming, God, He's got this amazing trick that He could see the future. You want the Jews to come to Israel. You're doing all these miracles for them to come to Israel. You know they're going to come back and tell the people that there are giants there. I have a very good solution for you, God. You know what God is doing in Israel while the spies are going from place to place? Anyone know? He's having people, there's like a plague going on in Israel. Everybody's dying. And the spies come back and they say, Eretz Ochelet Yoshvea. It's a land that eats its inhabitants. So everywhere they go, there's funerals. God, I have a simple solution. Stop the funerals non-stop in Israel. Just kill the giants. Just have this one virus called Giganticus Maximus, and all it kills is the giants. And then, I think we had that disease this season in the Meadowlands. Either way, just one disease that kills the giants, and then the spies won't see the thing that's going to make them tell the Jews not to come. The Jews won't get that report. Next thing you know, hallelujah, Yerushalayim, Shel Zahav, we're all sitting in Israel. Why didn't God do that? The answer is because just like the original Galut carries the seeds for every galut. Every time a person is not productive, operating, the seed of that is the lack of belief in oneself, the lack of belief in their capacity and their capability, my friends, to do good today and every day. So too, the original Ge'ulah, the original coming home, also had to have in it the seeds of the fact that I can slay giants. And if they could come to Israel and feel that they couldn't do it because there are giants there, then the Jews were not ready to come home. The crying that night illustrated not that the Jews can't come as a punishment for their crying, but that they were not yet ready. What are you crying for, baby? Get up off the mat. Have you not slayed giants already? Do you ever wonder why God had them fight Sichon and Og before they got to Israel? So that they could know that that was possible. And yet, they still didn't believe. Sichon and Og were also giants. My friends, therefore, what does God do? If someone made the Jews feel like they were nobodies, what did God need that the Jewish people could feel about Egypt with all of their strength? That they were nobodies. That the Egyptians, this larger than life force in their life, was nothing. It presented as huge, but it was nothing. And the only way you could pass along that message, when something seems so big, and you explain to your child that what you're afraid of is nothing but a shadow, and it's casting a far longer shadow than it itself is to say it so loudly, and to make it so small that the child and his child and his child's child will understand that there is nothing that can stand in the way of Am Yisrael when it is doing that which is right. That is the secret of leaving Galut. It is the secret of obtaining Ge'ulah, of coming to Eretz Yisrael. It was the reason why God needed to make a mockery of the Egyptians. We need to feel not only that we can vanquish our enemies, but that obviously we will. Because look at what's become of our enemies. They are nothing. In the words of Twain, they have faded to dream stuff. They've become just some feeble memory of something. So my friends, that's why we repeat it year after year. That's why we drive it home into the consciousness of our children. My friends, if that's the case, ask yourself, what messages are you driving home not only into the ears of your kid, but that you're saying so strongly that you know that he will pass it along to his children? You don't get a million messages that you drive home so strongly that it endures for generations. My friends, today, a lot of people talk about the concept of creating generational wealth. They want to create not only money enough for their children, but for their children's children. Now, I don't know if that is a good thing. I know a lot of people think that that's a sign that you really made it. You really made it if you made enough money to give to your kids so that they never have to work and your grandchildren never have to work. And you know what I'll tell you. You give your kids that much money and you give them that little a work ethic and you think you did them the biggest favor because you know what? You grew up poor and you had to make it for them. You are messing up your children and your children's children's for generation. This is not generational wealth that you are giving. It is generational poverty and paucity of moral values, of good work ethic, of the appreciation of things. My friends, understand that that's what you're doing. Instead, what God tells Abraham is, when your kids leave Egypt, you know what they're going to leave with? They will leave with a great treasure. But the Jews don't leave Egypt with their greatest treasure. They get a greater treasure down at the Yam Suf a little while later. So why does God tell Abraham that they'll leave with a treasure? And the answer is because generational wealth is not what God was talking about. He was telling Abraham, your children will leave with something that will be with their children for all time. And you know what that message is? Et asher hit'alalti b'Mitzrayim. That their enemies, be they physical or spiritual, be they Yetzer Hara or not, Your children will have the ability to look and laugh at anything that stands in their way. And for a Jew, the word I'm impossible is really just an amalgam of I'm possible. And when that happened, you know when that happened? That happened when they learned to laugh in the face of their enemies. To understand that anything that presents itself is big. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. May Hashem bless us to take the seeds of Mitzrayim's galut, employ it in our life, communicate it to our grandchildren, say it so loud that we know our children will have no choice but to say it to their kids. My dad used to say, my mom would always say. And then, Be'ezrat Hashem, each one of the children will achieve Geulah, not just from leaving this land to go back to Eretz Yisrael, although that too, but in everything, in every difficult situation, in every challenging moment in their life. They will know how to call upon that belief in themselves. They'll know that you believe in them. They'll know that what you told them was the truth because you told them difficult truths. They'll know that when you made something unimportant, it was because it was unimportant, not because you're a critical, cynical person. In that space, my friends, we create children that are durable, that are resilient, and that will stand the test of time. Baruch Adonai Le'olam.